Welcome to Landmark Theater's Q&A podcast. In this podcast, you will hear a discussion with writer-director James Schamus from the film Indignation, moderated by Deadline Hollywood's Pete Hammond, recorded at the Landmark in West Los Angeles.
Well, so the big question is, what drew you to this? Because Philip Roth has had an amazing literary career, over 30 books and a Pulitzer Prize. He's had a checkered career in movies with adaptation. Some have worked very well and some haven't, but not a whole lot, surprisingly, and certainly not recently. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there are profound and deeply troubling psychological reasons why I was attracted to Philip Roth adaptations, which I won't get into because, I mean, I'm not paying you to listen to that. But I'm sure, I mean, has anybody here read this book? Just a very few, just a couple folks. But obviously, I hope there are some Roth readers out there, and certainly for, Jewish males of a certain age. You're pretty scarred for life when you come across Portnoy's complaint way too early, like way young, which of course happened to me. But no, for this one, I have to say I found the book at the airport, which was so weird. It was a mass market paperback. I mean, like what? And it was short, large type. I'm a slow reader, whatever. And I got to L.A., and I don't read Roth thinking like, oh, wow, I'll just read this book because it might make a great movie. It is for the pleasure of that voice. And when I landed, I realized I had fallen in love with these characters, all of them. I loved Dean Caldwell. I love Mom. I like them all. Olivia. And I realized that thing about Roth, which is 90% of the pleasure, which is his voice and that the language and just he's one of the greatest, I think, writers in English ever. You can't translate that to a screen. There is no voice in cinema. But this one had what we do have in cinema, which is I can hire, some people to wear costumes and have haircuts and say things and do things, right? The characters. And I saw a path from the page to the characters, and then that last step, of course, to the actors, to their what's in them, those truths. So that was really, yeah.
How do you approach an adaptation? You've done a few, but how do you approach an adaptation with an author who's still living and as revered as he is? And did you ever know him? Had you ever met Philip Roth?
Yeah, I'd met Philip a few times. We're not friends, but we weren't enemies. Right? But I had, and that's Upper West Side, blah blah, whatever. So, and I do kind of revere him, and that was a problem, I would say, because just in good conscience, I couldn't really proceed with the film without thinking that it wasn't a complete betrayal. And in the process of adapting the book, for those who read it, there's a lot. I actually created the frame story. I did a lot of stuff, the usual condensing and elisions. But you realize that adaptations are as much interpretations, and they're grapplings with. I took Roth seriously. I wanted to grapple with these questions and issues. So he's Philip Roth. We're not. And I did probably the stupidest thing I've ever done in my career. About a month before we started pre-production, I sent him the screenplay. And I thought if he really didn't like it, I probably would have called the movie off, and that would have been the end of my budding directorial career. So he did something pretty amazing. It's kind of honestly, the nicest thing anybody's ever done to me. He refused to read the script. And I was like, and I said, that's the healthy choice. But it was a gift, and I think he knew it was a gift. He was giving the gift of just, you're making this movie, just go. Come on. And I was so moved, too, because he wrote this. This is his 29th novel. And he wrote this at the ripe young age of 75, 76. And he's going
2008 it came out,
yeah,
right?
2008. And he's going back to a time when he was a 19-year-old. And all his books are versions of himself. They're not Roth. It's not autobiography. Of this kid. And I know that kid very well. Kind of I was a version of that kid, too, as many of us in that thing were. So, but he's going back. He went to Bucknell University as a freshman in 1951. Apparently, he had a very exciting first date with some blonde person. And so a lot of these things are kind of coming out of his own experience. But what I was moved by was that this protagonist, Marcus Messner, on the one hand, I truly love this kid. But on the other hand, let's face facts. I mean, this guy is, and he's very bright, but he's an ignoramus. I mean, he's in front of this young woman and hasn't a clue as to her trauma and what she's gone through and the abuse and just the thumb of the patriarchy on her. I mean, like anything about, and I thought that was really interesting to me that Roth is actually going back at that point in time to touch somebody. Somebody was touching him from all those many years ago, almost 60 years ago. And that very much moved me.
And what a cast you were able to put together on a low budget. And how many days did you have to shoot this film? Not that many,
well,
right?
You know, you go to these Q&As, right? Every independent filmmaker is going to give the same speech, like, we had so little money. But, yeah, we had 24 days to shoot, so it was crazy. It was nuts. But, yeah, no, but because there's people here, we're in L.A., people know the business. So that was nuts. And it's not like Bud Bedecker, the Tall T with Randolph Scott was like 14 days. Okay, so he wins. But yeah, we were doing a period piece, and you move the camera 5 inches. It's like there's hip hop happening because we shot in New York. So it was pretty tight. You embrace it, right? So we couldn't afford trailers. Okay, so you can't afford a trailer. So Logan and the rest of the cast, between takes, we're just hanging out. It was like a family. It was like a barbecue,
And you get these incredible, because you're shooting in New York, and you're James Schamus, you're able to attract a certain level of actor here, and you've gotten some beyond Logan Lerman and Sarah, who's the female lead, Sarah Gadon. You have wonderful Linda Imon.
Yeah, Linda Imon, yeah.
And Tracy Letts,
mom,
who plays the dean.
Yeah.
And then the father, Max, is
Danny Burstein, who's currently Tevye on Broadway. So it's not too intimidating. You're a first-time director, and it's like Tracy Letts. He's just won a Pulitzer and a Tony, and he's Tracy Letts. He's 6'4", and he's the head of the CIA or whatever in Homeland. But but he is Tracy. But he's it turns out a very nice guy. But Danny, who just he's been nominated 6 times for the Tony, right? Like he's kind of a god in New York, in our little neighborhood there. He's lost every time. He's like the Susan Lucci of the Tonys, but he just lost this year to, of course, Hamilton. But it's and then Linda's been nominated twice for a Tony, and she's unbelievable. She was Mike Nichols' favorite actor in his last years, as he was working a lot with her.
She's amazing.
She's incredible, and she is as intimidating in real life as she is in the movie. Like that's for sure. I mean, we become very good friends, but I'm so scared of her. Like so scared. Yeah.
They come in like that scene, between the dean and Marcus is 15 pages in the script, something like that. It's a long scene. How long did you have to rehearse it and shoot that?
Yeah, which scene you're talking about? Okay. I realized that was like the movie Living or Dying, and obviously one reason why we were so low budget is because financiers read it as or most you get past page 3 in a scene in an American screenplay to page 4, and then they just throw the script away, right? So it doesn't happen. It's not supposed to happen. So, we prepped it for a long time. I mean, I thought through everything, from camera angles and lenses and placement and who's in the center of the frame and focal lengths and angle, like low, high. Everything was. There was an architecture to the scene that I knew I needed. But in fact, I didn't rehearse it much. I had them only read it through a couple times. Logan, God bless him, and he really, truly is that nice Jewish boy, right, from right here in L.A. He spent 6 months preparing essentially for that scene. So if Marcus Messner had memorized Bertrand Russell's Why I'm Not a Christian, Logan Lerman memorized it. It was that level of insane prep. So by the time we got to set, and I did a few things that, I probably, maybe in retrospect, I should have done them. I didn't tell the actors until we showed up that morning that I was not going to break up the scene and shoot it in bits. So every take, every piece of performance you see in that is part of an 18-minute take, again and again and again and again and again, until the very end at the door. I did a pickup there because we had to do put the mushroom soup in for the barfing and then the fall. So and I couldn't have him have mushroom soup in his mouth for 18 minutes, stuff like that. But other than that, but they were incredible. They were troopers. They were off book, 100% memorized the whole time.
Wow. Also, I'm going to mention this because I didn't mention it in the beginning, but James is also very distinguished in other areas of the business. He ran Focus Features, was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture for Brokeback Mountain and many other things. He is a screenwriter. works a lot with Ang Lee, was nominated for 2 Oscars for Crouching Tiger, and I mean on and on and on when you look at your credits, and you have been on the other side of things. So in going out to your directorial debut here, did that make you nervous, or are you so ingrained in the business you sort of like felt like I can do this?
You know, the answer is twofold. If you're ingrained in the business, that means you're in a state of nervous anxiety all the time anyhow, right? I mean, you know, this is what it is. And also, you know, and yeah, I did. I explained to my family when I sat down and I decided to direct this, and I said, look, you know, I'm a fairly high-value target, you know, like at Sundance, coming out with my first film. So, and by the way, the track, if you mentioned the track record for adapting Philip Roth is mixed. The track record for late middle-aged producers and executives directing their first movies is fantastic. We just kill it, you know. So I just thought, like, I'm probably just this will be a complete embarrassment. And I thought, what the hell? You know, I'm old, I'm not that good, whatever, who cares? I had the opportunity, and so that was my attitude. And that also fueled a lot of my sense with my actors and my crew, which is just, let's just go do the best we can and chill out. Like, we don't have to prove anything, because frankly, the whole idea of this is so bizarre. I mean, it's called Indignation. It's like, who buys a ticket to Indignation? You do, but thank you. But you know what I mean?
What I love too is that you also are very versatile in that you wrote the song that plays on the radio. Now, why not just get a song from that period, you know, that's well known, but you and your composer, who's a first-time movie composer, actually wrote the song, and it sounds just like a hit from the 50s.
Well, why not give me $25,000 so I can license Tony Bennett's first #1 hit, which was that month they were driving in the car to the cemetery. That was his first hit, which is crazy. But we didn't. We were really, and it was fun. Again, you know, we just felt liberated by the fact we didn't have the resources. And I also, as you know, this does trigger really the most embarrassing humble brag I could possibly do, but it's genuinely embarrassing. I'm actually an Academy-nominated songwriter already. Okay?
You are.
I am. And it's so
tell them what
embarrassing.
that song is.
It's so embarrassing. Honestly, I was producing Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and we decided that it would be great for the Asian market to have like a Cantonese pop song in the end credits, right? And so I co-wrote this song, did the lyrics, and I did like these Buddhist lyrics, love before time. I know, it's like really you did, but the studio loved it so much that they said, why don't you do the English version? And we got Coco Lee, who was she still is, a gigantic recording artist, to sing it. And so they said, can we put the English version on the American and European prints? And Ang and I were like, oh, it's so cheesy, but you know, it's the end credits. Everybody's leaving the theater anyhow. Who cares? So we did, and then, of course, the film took off, and our distributors, who were very good friends of mine at Sony Pictures Classics, Michael Barker and Tom Bernard, they were just ragging on me the whole time, like, we're going to get you an Oscar nomination for that song. And I was like, do not try to, I do not want, because, you know, the Academy Awards, especially back then, they had that, I won't even name her, the woman who used to do the choreography.
Debbie Allen.
Oh, thank you. And I was trying to be polite. And so, of course, it gets nominated, and this triggers. So, and of course, I'm in the category that you're is I think Bjork, Tom Petty, Robert Newman, and Bob Dylan. So I'm like, okay, guys, here's how it's gonna play. Like, just please, like, pretend this didn't happen. I'm voting for Bob Dylan, and just like, let's just forget the whole thing. And I'll never forget, we were waiting to go to the Academy Awards, true story, some friends, and I'm telling this story exactly the way I'm telling it because it's kind of a shtick, I know. And I said, and I voted for Bob Dylan, that's the punchline. And then Ang, who's sitting there, he goes, yeah, I voted for Bob Dylan too. And I was like, dude, no, you were trying to, it wasn't over me. And he goes, well, I voted for your screenplays.
That's great. So she's asking about the classical music and in scenes that don't have a lot going on.
I love working on music. All of Ang's movies, that's become my favorite thing, and it's really one of my great loves. And Jay Wadley, this is really a first time he's ever composed for a feature. So that was a big job convincing everybody that Jay was going to be the guy, and we spent a lot of time together. I listened to a lot of classical and avant-garde music from the 50s. So if you know Morton Feldman or Lou Harrison, these kinds of names, I had Jay really listen to a lot of that, and then we lifted it into what I thought was a very appropriate emotional kind of through line for the film. The interiority of the movie and the close-ups that you're speaking about, I mean, it's twofold. I knew I had to make a strong stylistic choice to sustain the story. And to me, everything I did was all about these actors and just reading their souls, to be honest. These are characters who are speaking from and to the dead. The dead people are very present, as they are to all of us, honestly, whether we acknowledge it or not. And then also, by the way, extremely long take close-ups are the cheapest thing you can do in cinema. So just saying. It's not like somebody's going, if the bus goes over 55, it will blow. You know, it's like, I don't have a bus, you know. So the question is about what made Roth and us bring in the Army service, all that stuff. Look, I think the gift of the book is that it's called Indignation, that it is a story about, a very intimate story, but at the same time it is about what happens to the best minds of our generation and these young people who get chewed up by this crazy American imperium that just keeps going on. And it's not these insane overseas wars that you just don't even remember. There's so many of them. And you know, the rise of McCarthyism and this weird xenophobia, the early 50s, 1951. You've got the House Un-American Activities Committee in full throttle. You've got the blacklist. So I was able to kind of pay note to that. If you remember in the shul, in the temple during Kaddish, there's a very elderly man sitting in the front next to our mourners. That's Walter Bernstein, one of the great screenwriters in Hollywood history, you know, Failsafe, and he wrote The Front. He's a very good pal of mine. It's like it's weird, my best friends are like 97, but yeah, there you go. And you have this other moment in American history when women in World War II were, you know, bursting out of the house, Rosie the Riveter, they were just, you know, they were, there's an incredible liberatory moment, and then the 50s just came and just like, big, and hypersexualized and slut-shaming at the same time. And I thought, wow, that has nothing to do with like 2016 presidential election, does it? I mean, it's crazy, you know? Like we're so far advanced now.
I think that Roth would have agreed that it really wasn't just about Jewish young men at that time, but the raising of young women and young men in the 50s who were so out of touch and were so controlled by their parents, controlled by the schools, that they hadn't developed a sense of self yet, that he was so out of touch with how mentally ill she was, he just was not aware.
Absolutely, I think Roth was. Look, the other thing I remembered when I was developing the film, I always put Roth in the same bucket as all the other like white macho, straight white dude writers from the, you know, like Updike, Cheever, Mailer, you know, Roth. You kind of like, oh, that's that shelf, you know. But think about it. He's really of the same generation, just a couple years off from another Jewish kid up the road in New Jersey named Allen Ginsberg, whose aunt, by the way, Allen Ginsberg's aunt, here's how crazy it gets. Allen Ginsberg's aunt was Philip Roth's high school English teacher. It's like crazy, it's amazing. And I realized that Indignation and Howl, really there's a lot of connection. And in fact, that's why the scene is in the movie when they're reading Mourner's Kaddish. That's actually my favorite Ginsberg poem is Kaddish. It's not in the book. And Bertrand Flusser, the roommate who's in love with him, right, is kind of a stunted Ginsberg. And another writer came up, which I hadn't thought about. I never made the connection with Roth, ever. 1 year older than he, started her freshman year at Smith College down the road from Mount Holyoke, where Olivia Hutton, played by Sarah, started her freshman year in 1950, and that's Sylvia Plath. And I thought, wait a second. And not that Olivia Hutton is Sylvia Plath, but far from it, again, I'm not saying that. But Sarah and I just decided we're going to get into this. And even her writing, like when she's writing the letter to Marcus, she spent 3 months learning how to write like Sylvia Plath. That's her sans serif style, her the hair, everything. And I was reading Sylvia Plath's unexpurgated journals when we were in prep, and I got to the end, 3 months before she died. She was reading religiously Philip Roth, and she wrote in her journal, she said, "Someday I hope I write as well as Philip Roth," which kind of killed me. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. And the future of independent cinema is word of mouth, so tell your friends. Thanks.
You have been watching the Landmark Theater's Q&A podcast. For further in-depth discussions with filmmakers, be sure to check out the other Q&As available on our channel from past films. And remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all our bonus content. Thanks for watching.